Greetings lecturer and everyone. We are from Group 3. In this video we are going to be presenting to you about the Village of the Sea, Chapter 10. So let's go. And here we have the characters. Here we go. Mr. Penvala had asked Jagu to give Hari an evening off, and he had brought Hari to the valley sea face to see the approach of monsoon. He had bought a green coconut and a pepper cone filled with puffed rice for Hari. Hari felt as if he was a child once again as he got someone buy food for him.
See, Hari, the monsoon is coming.
As predicted, the monsoon really did come. On the 10th of June came a storming out of the sea, pouring onto the city just as Mr. Penvala said it would. As a result, the city was flooded. Hari and the other two boys from the kitchen went out to help push some cars to get some coins from the drivers. Despite the pouring, Hari and the other boys still worked overtime without break. Consequently, Hari got sick. But surprisingly, Mr. Penvala next door was also sick. And now Hari had no escape at all from the kitchen and eating house since he was locked up in Jagu restaurant. He neither could go to the workshop nor the park. One night when Jagu was locking up the kitchen, he stopped and looked at Hari. He realized Hari was sick, so decided to invite him to his house.
Hey, you are ill. You had better come along with me. Come, I'll take you home.
Hari followed Jagu along the narrow muddy path and finally reached his home. Even though Jagu was the owner of the eating house, his home was still in a slum. In Jagu's home, Jagu's wife seemed not to welcome Hari and kept shouting because she didn't have enough food and didn't accept that Hari could stay with them. She kept complaining.
Some of them do I'm you assuming I'm a human, but I gotta do to get it to you. I'm superhuman, innovative, and I made a rubber so that anything you say is shaking off of me in the room.
Shut up. Get my dinner and bring an extra plate for the boy. He is ill, and I'm taking him to the dispensary for the medicine tomorrow.
Hardly enough for us, and you bring one more to be fed? You think we can starve as long as you eat?
Jagu, making a terrible face at her, and continued.
I said shut up, or I'll go to the tortoise shop and have a drink instead of rotten food you prepare for me.
Furious with his wife, Jagu decided to leave the house and Hari behind. And the wife continued.
Go, and poison yourself. I will come and laugh at your funeral.
Speaking of Hari, he was afraid of Jagu's wife, but eventually talked to her.
Does he drink every night?
No, he does it only when he's falling.
My father drinks every night.
He does he? And beats your mom and stuffs you?
In the morning, Jagu took Hari to the dispensary and told him to stand in the queue. And while queuing, Hari suddenly encountered Jagu's wife and offered to help. But she denied, and Hari turned away. The new day eventually came. Hari went to work in the eating house normally, all day within the monsoon. But one day, the watchman of the tall building who had first brought Hari to the eating house stopped by and told Hari about the return of the Silvers. After thinking for a while, he decided not to go and work for them. One day, Hari was working under the rain. There were only few customers in the eating house. A moment later, a lorry driver came along with a radio.
Breaking news today. 10 fishing boats are reported lost at sea, while many fishermen are feared dead. Search parties are to be sent from Aliba as soon as the storm subsides.
Hari was terrified by the news and cried. Back in Tol, Leela's father gave up drinking alcohol and stayed with his wife at the hospital. She usually came to visit her mother and brought some money from her work. And speaking of the fishermen, they hadn't been able to do nothing during the monsoon, so they finally had decided to head out to the sea, even though Baiju had warned about the weather.
Fools, come back. Your boats aren't built for the weather.
The weather's fine, can't you see?
You'll be drowned and your boat's wrecked.
As expected, they had gone missing. The boats had been lost for nearly 4 days, and the storm began to withdraw. On a mission searching for the fishermen, Bijou with his boat helped the search parties organized by Navy and the Coast Guard at Aliba. They found out that 3 boats had sunk and 3 men had been drowned, but luckily the rest were rescued. Bijou was so proud of his boat and was not afraid to boast his cleverness and how wise he was to rescue the fishermen.
I told them not to go. The weather was too treacherous for those majestic boats.
Back to Leela and her family, they were doing fine, but the children were worried and asked each other when Hari would come. Perhaps when the monsoon is over, or when it will come at Diwali. We don't know yet in this chapter.
Hello teacher and everyone, I'm Mulin. I'm here to present to you the second part of the presentation, which is the analysis of the main messages of chapter 10. Let's start it with the theme in chapter 10. The first theme is about kindness and is included in 2 scenes. The first scene was when Jagu noticed that Hari was ill, so he brought Hari to his house. In this part, it shows that even Jagu has a restaurant with plenty of customers, yet his house was in a slum. Moreover, his family living condition was not good, as Jagu lived in a slum with a bad condition, and his child was sick as well. This chapter shows that Jagu isn't rich and has his problem to solve, but still he helps Hari and the 2 orphan boys that we have known from the previous chapter by providing food and job with salaries for them to survive. This whole situation shows us how generous Jagu is to other people who need help in difficult situations. If we look at the situation in Hari's hometown, fishermen could not afford to stay at home due to low stock for their families, and they had to go fishing during the monsoon. As a result, the boats have been lost for many days. At that time, Binju, the person who warned those fishermen to stop fishing at that weather, and also the person who the villagers make fun of, volunteered to rescue the missing fishermen and boats. His actions show how kind he is to help other people when they face problems. He also shared advice to the fisherman's wife that things have to change, then they can improve. From the conversation, it seems that Binju likes to see other people's development. Moving on to the next theme is about caring. As we can see, when the radio announced that 10 fishing boats were lost at sea off Aliba, Hari was worried when he heard the news, because that is his homeland, as he thought about his friends and neighbors who could be lost in that incident. Another scene is when Leela had seen the boats out at sea, and after she heard the news from old Hirabai. Leela was concerned about the fishermen and fishermen's wives' feeling after the loss of their husband. These 2 scenes show how Hari and Leela care about their fellow villagers. Let's move on to the next scene. It describes hardship. As we can see, Hari worked so hard to get his work done in the kitchen, and went out while raining to buy cigarettes for the customer so he can save more money for his family. Moving to Lila, this theme can also apply to her. As we can see, she had to work in order to have money to stock food in her house and give some to her father, so he could buy himself some food while taking care of his wife. When the monsoon came, Lila and her two sisters had to take care of their hunt by getting more palm leaves to cover the roof and more to cover the door and window from keeping the water out of the hunt. The last theme of this chapter describes how people could do anything for who they love. As we have read in chapter 10, Harry worked so hard without a break with the red cloth clinging to his body. Additionally, he never spent his money in Mumbai like going to the cinema. He worked so hard to save money for his family, therefore his mother has money to treat her illness and his family can improve their living condition. This theme can also apply to Lila's father, who used to be a drunk man and he never cares what's going on with his family at all. But in this chapter, we can see that he had given up drinking as he spent his time look after his wife and stay by her side at the hospital, so his wife will get better. If we look at the fishermen who had wait indoors for 3 months of the monsoon, they can't wait anymore, so they took the risk to go fishing for their families without thinking about their safety. Therefore, their families don't die because of hunger before the monsoon stops. All of these actions show us how they sacrifice and do anything for the ones they love, even to change their bad habits. And here's come to the end of the second part of the presentation. So let's move on to the next part.
Thank you, Mulim. I'm also Hoang, and I'm going to continue with the next part, which is about the analysis of the connection between the study text and real-life situation. Throughout the study text of the village by the sea in chapter 10, there are 3 main useful ideas that can be drawn from the study text as to make a comparison in the real-life situation and to illustrate the relevant points as just as a pop-up concept to show how it was correlated to one another in the real-life situation. Firstly, one of the main ideas that we can raise up and consider it as a primary idea of the study text was about the uncontrollable and the bias of the natural disaster. Obviously, it is particularly a serious problem for all the existence of life on the globe because of the high possibility that it can take away life immediately or even leave a long-term damage and reconstruction towards humanity. In the real-life situation, lots of people from different places around the globe are facing tons of problems when it comes to talks about the impacts of different forms of natural disaster, or even whenever the natural disaster season comes, in terms of the loss of life, the property damage, the health concern, the collapse of an economy, the non-movement of others important nation indicator, so on and so forth, since everything was uncontrollable, unstoppable, and unpredictable as the art of God. In a comparison to the study text, the city of Mumbai, as well as the village of Tours, were facing such a serious problem when the monsoon arrived. All days and nights were full of raining. Everywhere was flooded. The bus, trains, cars, and streets had stored in the water that rose higher and higher. The trees started to fall down. The school children were unable to go to school. The office workers were stuck at home. The people became ill. The business activities were stopped. The fishing boats were lost at sea. The fields were flooded. and the death rate of people were increasing, especially for those who live nearby the sea. Secondly, the kindness of people always existed and was prioritized by humanity as the sense of togetherness and generosity of helping one another while people are in need, without caring of who they are or what they have, since we are human. In the real world, the quality of kindness can be easily found inside each individual person through the behavior of what they did toward the needy person. And this behavior is not only found inside the rich people, but also inside the poor people as well. The poor people are more likely to help another poor and needy person because they truly understand the lesson life of being poor and how they have been struggling to live in the hardest condition. As in the study text, Dagu was willing to bring Hari to his house in order to give him fruit and promised to take him to the dispensary for medicine, while he himself was also struggling with a terrible life and had a family needed to be fed as well. It was hard enough for him to keep the family survive from poverty and starvation, as his child was ill and needed to be cured. Additionally, another character in the study text was Baiju, who was the rich man in the village of Tour and was willing to go out with his new boat to rescue the drowned fishermen and bring them back alive. And this is how it can show that the kindness of people still exists and was prioritized inside the heart of the rich and the poor people. They are willing to help one another if they had the possibility to do so. Lastly, it was about the poverty and the starvation that are the first that people have to go to risk their life. Seriously, the general people who are facing the difficulties of the poor living condition are forced to risk their life in order to survive from day to day. Some people are willing to do anything to earn some money in order to support their basic needs. They may take multiple tasks or even go into any field, even if they realize that they are going to lose their life along the way. That is because they have no other alternative choice for them, as they have already been struggling enough. If they do not decide to do that, they are still living in the difficult condition one. Therefore, they have thought that when they go out to earn some money, even if it is very risky, they still manage to do so, since it has a chance for them to survive from day to day. As in the study text, when the monsoon came, the life of the villager in Tour were facing a challenging life, since they had to stay inside their hut for such a long period of time. The whole village looked empty with everyone indoors. However, the life of the fishermen could not afford to stay inside their hut till the monsoon was over, since they were running out of their food. Therefore, whenever the rain slowed down, they come on their boats, stare at the sky, and wonder about the weather, even though they knew that there was a risky chance for them to lose their life, and they shouldn't do that. But there is no other better choice for them. At least if they were lucky and came back alive, they could at least bring something to feed their family from starvation. And now it comes to an end of our group presentation. If you have any question, you can feel free to ask. And thank you so much for your priceless time.